Okay, technically I think I'm supposed to be streaming right now. Oh, whoops, I got the wrong title. Give me a second. Hello, world. Let me fix the title of this stream really quick. MA about Epic Stack. All right, there we go. All right, so hi everybody. Thank you for joining for KCD Office Hours. Let me just grab this, stick this here, and do that. And you'll see what I'm doing here in a second. There we go. And now let me just pull this over here so we get chat over there. Sorry, should have had more of this prepared. I hit like go live and it went live. I was not expecting it to go that quickly. There we go. Yes, hello everyone. So this is Office Hours. If you've never been to Office Hours before, then let me explain it to you. Let me share my screen. So every week when I'm available, I start a Zoom call and answer questions from that people have about whatever. Happy to answer whatever questions that I can that you need. So this week we're doing something a little bit special, and that is I want to answer questions about the Epic Stack and what that is all about. So yeah, sorry, this is a little distraction. Can I like turn off the video? Pause. There we go. Yeah, so the if you are unfamiliar, the Epic Stack is this thing that I released. The idea is I want to make it so that you can skip the analysis paralysis of deciding about which tools to use, because we have tons of tools available and most of them are probably fine. So it would just be really great to not have to make all these decisions between which ones you want to use. So the goal of the Epic Stack is to give you a really good foundation upon which you can build really epic applications. That's the idea. So if you want to dive a little deeper into it, I've got this blog post on EpicWeb.dev called the Epic Stack, and there's a embed to my announcement video at RemixConf when I announced the stack. And yeah, give that a look for sure. I'll actually, I stuck a link to that in the Discord. So this is our Office Hours channel. That's where I'm going to go to once we're done answering questions about the Epic Stack. And happy to answer questions from anybody on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, whatever. I've got the chat in here, so feel free if you have any questions about the Epic Stack. And then additionally, I will be answering questions on Twitter. So it looks like we haven't had any questions. I should have like planned this ahead probably. But yeah, let's take a look at, we do have a question. Hooray. Jean, there, I'm going to stick this right there. There we go. So y'all can see that. Can you explain what trade-offs are using the Epic Stack authentication versus service like Supabase or Auth0? This is more like a security standpoint. Yeah, so turns out authentication is not as complicated as at least I thought. And there's a lot to consider when it comes to like dealing with bots and stuff like that. But for like the basics of authentication, it's really not super complicated. And I can show you what the Epic Stack does for this right here. So we go to our app and then utils, we have our session server. This is responsible for managing the session and a cookie. There's not a whole lot here. This create cookie session storage is coming from Remix Run Node. There's actually still, even there, not a lot of things going on. So the you can feel free to dive into this, but the basic idea is this session storage just allows you to get a session from a cookie string. So it gets the session underscore session. That's what that cookie is going to be called. Commit that session, so generate the set cookie header. Destroy session will destroy that set cookie header. and then you just configure this using the same config that you would with the cookie package. So like that's all it takes to set up a cookie, but actually doing the authentication piece, we're using a library for that. So it turns out you don't have to pay somebody to do authentication related stuff. You can just use a library, or implement it yourself. Like on my own website, my authentication stuff is all totally custom built, and it works really well. But here we're using a library largely because Remix Auth also supports third-party authentications with like Google and Twitter and Facebook and GitHub, all that stuff. And I am planning on including at least one of those in the Epic stack, probably GitHub and maybe another, to demonstrate how to do that. Yeah, so we create this authenticator. We have our session storage from that session server we looked at. That authenticator has a number of strategies that we can use. This one in particular is a form strategy. So just takes a form username and password, and then we do our own validation to verify the user is logged in. This verify login we'll look at here in a second. And I think actually it is, yeah, it's in this file, so I'll look at that now. We're just going into our database to find a user with that a matching password hash, and sorry, we're getting the user by their username, and then we compare the password that's been given with the password hash that we have stored in our database. So we're not storing raw passwords. We're using bcrypt to hash the passwords, and so that's what we store in the database. So we use bcrypt to compare the password that's been given with the hash that's in the database. If it's not valid, then we turn null. If it is, then we return the user ID, and that's it. It is actually like pretty straightforward as far as that's concerned. And then as far as like having authenticated endpoints and stuff, we have this require user ID that will take that request cookie or that the cookie that's in the request, and authenticate that user. That's what the authenticator is going to do for us. And again, like the jokes tutorial in the Remix app builds all this stuff from scratch, so you can go through that. Like it's something that can be done in a tutorial, so it's really not that complicated when it comes down to security. Now, you start bringing in things like SSO and stuff like that. That's stuff I would 100% use a library for. I don't know how to do any of that, but I'm pretty sure Remix Auth actually supports stuff like that too. So authentication is definitely one of the things that I really don't think you need an abstract or a service for. And so, and one of the guiding principles of the Epic stack is to avoid services when you can. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, authentication is built in, and it will remain that way for the foreseeable future, because I just think it works really well. If you do end up deciding you want to use a service, that's fine. It's your prerogative, of course. I would strongly advise against deleting your users table, though. The services want you to do that because they realize that they're not really offering anything unless they are like storing your data and stuff. So I would strongly advise against doing that. All right, Rolas. There's some rejection of using SQLite for production apps. Which is the rationale for considering SQLite? Great question. Another thing that I've got in here is the decision documents, and I wrote a decision document on SQLite. So I'll stick that, I guess, as I can do a reply, can't I? There we go. Will this go to everything? Can't post a message to some channels. Well, hopefully this goes to, yeah, YouTube. There we go. Yeah, this document will tell you a lot of the reasons why I think that SQLite is a lot more capable than people typically kind of think. SQLite is phenomenal, and I think that it actually avoids a lot of the problems that you typically have with a service. There are some limitations, and I discussed some of those in here. Stuff like a timescale DB would be really cool to have for some use cases, but not like a lot of people don't have those use cases. And you can use SQLite for like your regular data, and then Postgres for your time series data. Like you don't typically store those in the same place anyway. Yeah, SQLite is definitely capable of handling more data than you will probably ever have for your typical app. We don't have the N+1 problem with SQLite, or at least we can kick the can way down the road before that, because we have zero latency. We can have distributed SQLite with LiteFS, which is pre-configured in the Epic stack. It's, yeah, phenomenal. Huge simplification for development and everything. So that's why we're using SQLite. It's awesome. All right, awesome. So yeah, we've gotten all those questions here. Let me check Twitter. Yeah, Twitter has not been getting as much engagement as it used to for me, which is a shame, but that is what it is. So while I'm waiting for other comments to come streaming in from both Discord and Twitch and YouTube and stuff, I'm going to show you one thing in our docs, which are, yeah, it's going to get better, I promise. There's not a lot in here, but the guiding principles. So I want to talk about a couple of those things. If you haven't already watched the talk that I presented about the Epic stack. So a couple of the guiding principles here. We want to limit third-party services. So if we, and this comes back to our conversation about authentication. If we can reasonably build, deploy, and maintain it ourselves, then we do. This saves on cost and reduces complexity. And on top of that, if we can build it into our primary app rather than having a bunch of different services, microservices are interesting and work great for certain situations, but I really think that monoliths are drastically simpler, both to develop and deploy and manage in so many ways. I am a big fan of monoliths. So take the monolith as far as you can. And so, yeah, I guess that could maybe be a guiding principle, but keeping everything in one place will reduce the cost and complexity as well, because now you don't have to worry about coordinating services and you don't need to worry about Kubernetes or any of those things. So yeah, that is one of the guiding principles. Another is to include only the most common use cases as a project generator. It's expected that some of the code will be deleted. Like, for example, this app has some routes associated to notes. So all of these things, like, you're going to delete that right away, including the models for that and stuff like that. So like, we do have some stuff just to make sure that, like, yes, things are working, they're continuing to work, like people can do this. But yeah, it's just, we don't want to implement support for every type of feature. That's like not possible. So we don't want to, like, this isn't a place for examples. It's not the documentation. So if you needed to document things, we're going to create examples or put things in docs instead of the starter app. So that's another guiding principle. Another is minimize setup friction. So we do need to use some services. And so for those, we want to try and defer signing up for any services as long as possible. So this is what we do with Mailgun. I can actually show you what we do with that in our utils. Where did that go? Where are we? Utils. There we go. And if we go to email.server, then in here, if you don't have the Mailgun sending key, and we're not running in mocks. So like during mocks, we don't hit this Mailgun anyway. You'll just log it in the console. But if we're not running in under mocks mode and we don't have the Mailgun sending key, then you need it to be able to send any emails. And so we just give an error to the console and we return. So this is how we're deferring signing up for stuff. Eventually, when you do ship to production, you do want emails to actually go out and work. And so, like, yeah, that is important, but we're deferring it by saying it is actually okay to deploy this without having the Mailgun sending key set up. And it, like, just so if you're experimenting, you're like, okay, I want to deploy this to production. I don't want to bother signing up for Mailgun. And so we'll just check the production logs. When I say, okay, sign up, the email gets sent. okay, now I'm just going to go to production logs. Here's the email that would have been sent. And so then we can click on the link and proceed. So doing things like that, we're doing the same thing with Sentry. There's a pull request for Sentry right now. We want to make it possible to do that. So that's another guiding principle is just make it so that you have as few things to do as possible when you're getting set up to cater well for the experimentation process that people are going to use the Epic Stack for. I think that's actually quite valuable. But even more important than that is the adaptability. So while I feel strongly that the opinions that I have made here are really good ones, things do necessitate some change. Like maybe you have some sort of legal requirement that you can't use some service or whatever. You have to use this other service. You got a contract with this other service or something like that. And so we want to make it easy to swap out the different services. That is not something I would say is accurate or easy to do right now, but it is a guiding principle of something we want to improve on. Even with Fly, I think I would like to have a reasonable mechanism to swap out that service. And right now we have a Docker file, and so like you just take your Docker file and go somewhere else, and that should work just fine. But yeah, I do want to make it relatively easy to switch hosting providers, email providers, the error monitoring, logging, all of that stuff, even like image hosting and stuff like that, because we actually host images ourselves right now, and probably will in the future as well. I think that's something we can manage ourselves. But yeah, I want to make and file hosting as well. So I want to make it so that we can have an opinion, but also make it so that you can make changes or decide like how you want to do things differently. Another thing that is a guiding principle is there's only one way to do things. So yeah, we don't want to make more than one way to do the same thing, because part of the whole goal of this thing in the first place is to make it to limit the number of decisions you have to make. So yeah, that's another goal, is to just have one way to do the same thing. Now this is a little bit nuanced, because we do actually, in our cache server file here, you'll notice we have a cache database. That's a SQLite database. We connect to it using Better SQLite 3, which is awesome. But we also have an LRU cache. And so this is sort of two ways to do the same thing, because we've got two caches, one that's persisted in the file system as a SQLite database, and one that is in memory with LRU. But they do have slightly different use cases. I use the LRU cache for stuff that I'm okay with getting blown away every time the server restarts, or it really is only there for things that I want to cache for, 30 seconds or something like that. That I know it's going to be accessed a lot. It takes 3 or 4 seconds to generate that value. We have stale while revalidate in place, and so it will give me the cache value and then go revalidate. So it's something that I'm constantly updating that just doesn't really make sense persisted. And so like that is maybe one exception to this only one way rule. But I think the guiding principle is we want to justify doing the same, doing what looks like the same thing twice or two different ways. So that is that. That's some of the guiding principles. John, hi there. Why do you think places like Hacker News are so quick to reject a stack like this? There are some ideas there is some idea that it's overcomplicated. What are your thoughts? So to answer the first question, I think Hacker News, it seems to me that a lot of people who are on there are just looking for validation of some kind, and by pushing other people down, they feel like they're pushing themselves up. That has just been my experience with Hacker News over the last decade that I've been in software. So yeah, I think that's like really that seems to be a major personal problem that they have. I don't know, it stinks. So whether this is overcomplicated, I mean, yes, this would certainly be overcomplicated if you were building like a little toy static site thing that just like was a example of how to build a toy static site, I guess. I don't know. It's just like a single page thing. Yeah, this is totally overkill. But anything that needs user accounts, user data, and yeah, actual hosting, a long running server, yeah, database, I guess. This is not overcomplicated at all. Well, I suppose I should add also, you want a good UX, because you can totally build something that is like an MPA old school thing, full page refreshes, really slow database, really slow server, long latency to the one region that you're deployed in. Like if those are trade-offs that you're willing to make, if you're willing to trade off the UX for a simpler development environment, then sure, yeah, you can get something simpler for sure, but I'm not willing to trade those things off, and that's why the Epic stack is the way that it is. Wagner, what's up? What is the plus sign doing at the end of the folder names? Okay, yeah. So one thing that I probably should list in the list of things that the Epic stack has built in is Remix flat routes. So Remix flat routes is awesome. I'll put a link to this in the comments here. Basically, it is Ryan came up, or I think Jamie Kyle also kind of helped Ryan come up with this new route convention for Remix that's different from the V1 convention. And so he kind of put up a specification, this gist that it described that. And then Michael Carter put together an implementation of this specification. And this was only possible because in Remix, it is possible to configure your routes using the Remix config rather than only using the file system. And so here, what we do is we say, ignore all route files because we don't care about your convention. And then we're going to define routes using this routes API where we're going to use this flat routes thing here. It's great. Yeah, so that's what we're doing here in the Epic stack, because the flat routes ends up being very similar to the V2 routing system with the addition of hybrid routes, which are awesome. Hybrid routes allow, so with flat routes, everything is flat. Like once you get into the routes folder, everything is in there. Any directory is, it's going to look for the index TSX in that directory, and that will be the route. And any files within that directory are just not used at all. They're just going to be used by that index TSX. So all that the flat routes with folders gives you is the ability to take a single file that's a route and break it up into a bunch of different files, which I don't really find very terribly useful. Especially when your routes get pretty long. Those file names can be pretty long. It's kind of annoying. And while it will be sorted in such a way to keep similar routes co-located relative in the flat route feature, there's not really a good way to share code between those similar ones. And it's just those file names can get really, really long. And so what hybrid routes allows you to do is it allows you to add a plus. Where's the plus on these things? Yeah, we'll have to look at that. Let's just find the plus. Yeah, nested folders with flat files convention. So you add a plus to it, and it's effectively the same as if you'd added a dot. So if you're familiar with the Remix convention, a dot means here's where a slash is, with the exception of certain other conventions where this is not going to have auth in the URL and stuff. I would defer you to actually just look at this documentation. This is the sort of thing that you don't memorize. You just reference anytime you need to do something with this. I mean, maybe if you do it a lot, you would memorize it naturally. But anyway, the idea is that it allows us to both have the benefit of both having flat routes, but also co-located as well. So like you can have it as flat or co-located as you want. And I just really like that a lot. So it's basically, it's a hybrid between the V1 and the V2 routing convention. So that's what the pluses are all about. Leave it to me to take like 10 minutes to answer a 1-minute question. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Yep, that's that. Seems like there's like it's all of Hacker News, which is a shame. Yes, that's true. Hacker News is the worst. Never read the comments. Is the Epic stack using React Query? No, it's not actually. I have yet to find a situation in a Remix app where I felt like I needed React Query. React Query is for caching in the client, and with the way that Remix is makes things available to me and is optimized for route-based data loading, I haven't felt like I needed anything like that. Even with like components that are reused in a bunch of different places, full stack components has worked out really well. I could see a world where React Query is useful in a Remix app, but I haven't hit it. And it's certainly not something that's common enough to be a default. So, all right, Drew, you rock my socks. I'm not even wearing socks. I'm wearing flip-flops today. That's nice of you, Drew. Thank you. Plans to add job queue support. Yeah, there's actually a discussion about this, background jobs, right here, to which I answered definitely. I would like to see if there's a way to have the job queue being run within the same VM as our app, so we don't have to have a separate image or a separate service. That even a service that we are running, I want to avoid having to have a separate service we are running. That may not be possible, but it's a goal that I would like to try. So yes, this is definitely on my mind, something that I want to have in here eventually, for sure. Ideas and suggestions are definitely welcome. Hey, Shane, any new thing that is this comprehensive will seem overwhelming at first. When I looked at a Create React app for the first time, it looked overcomplicated too. Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Hello, are there any plans to make it modular, like you get to select the pieces? Yeah, that's a good question. So the T3 actually does this, where part of their CLI will ask you, like, do you want to use like these different services, like which ones do you want to use, and then it will generate the thing for you. I have mixed feelings about this. I think if you choose anything but TypeScript right here, it will say, yeah, just kidding. You can't use not TypeScript, which I think is awesome. Somebody did actually make an issue or a discussion on creating a CLI for Epic Stack, which 100% will be a thing eventually. Create Epic Stack is already published, so I'm squatting on that because we are definitely going to do this. But yeah, so my mixed feelings about like which packages you want to enable is that like a big benefit to the Epic Stack is avoiding having to make decisions. And then if the first thing you have to do when you create the Epic Stack is make a bunch of decisions, I feel like we've messed up. So I don't know, maybe something where by default it just has everything, and it doesn't even ask you, but then you can add a flag that says like customize, and then because now you're opting into making decisions, I think that might be okay. I think I'd be okay with that. But for somebody who's just like, I just want to build an app, I'm going to use this thing, I want to avoid having to make a bunch of decisions, I think that it would be a travesty if they say, okay, create an Epic app that will make all the decisions for me, and now I have to make a bunch of decisions. Like, do I really want to have these things? Now, do I need auth? That's probably not something that like people would have a hard time deciding. Like, yeah, I do need auth. Do I want a database? Yeah, I guess I do need a database. Stuff like that. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this, but I'm mostly on the side of let's default to like you get all the things, and then maybe a customized flag would be appropriate here. So good question. So simple. Sweet. I like simple things. Dig more into Remix. Yeah, I think you'll love it. Remix is the future. Change my mind. Yeah, I'm not going to change your mind about that. I think it is too. All right, let's take a look and see if Twitter has come through with anything. It doesn't look like it. So yeah, there we go. With that, I think I'm going to move into, I'll wait a second to see if anybody has questions, but I'm going to move into my regular Discord-based office hours. So you're welcome to ask more questions about the Epic Stack in office hours, but I'm actually going to close this and I'm not going to check Twitter for questions anymore. So if you want to ask any other questions, then join the Discord and ask questions there. And as always, I have the Call Kent podcast where you can ask questions about stuff. Somebody did ask a question this morning about the Epic Stack, so you could ask about the Epic Stack or anything else on the Call Kent podcast. So with that, I haven't seen any other questions coming in through Twitch or YouTube. You're welcome to stay tuned for my regular office hours here. So, oh, also, I just realized there are two other people. Renee is in here as well as Atambik Umer. Cool. Do either one of you have questions before I get into the Discord? Just for everybody's benefit, I always give priority to people who are in the Zoom. So join the Zoom if you want priority. Renee, I noticed you unmuted yourself and then I started talking. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just letting you know I don't have anything at the moment.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I don't see you, but good to hear you.
Yeah. My office is a bit messy today, so
you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. This is one benefit to having a green screen I can pull down. It's like you don't know what's behind there.
Yeah, should definitely grab one of those.
Cool. Justin, you just joined. Did you have any questions? Or are you just hanging out?
Just hanging for the moment.
Okay.
I might think of something though. How long have you been streaming? A while or?
Sorry, say that again.
Have you been streaming for a minute now or?
Yeah. You mean today?
Yeah,
I started like a half hour ago.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll think of something quick here.
No, that's no need to feel pressure to think of things. You're welcome to just hang out too.
Nice.
Actually, just thought of something.
Yeah.
I barely caught like the tail end of you saying to steer clear of deleting your users table when using external services. Was that specific to your Epic Stack since it's all in, or are you kind of feeling that way about like whatever project, if you're using an auth service, like use a webhook to get that user info into your own database rather than relying on them? Is that sort of a blanket thing for you?
Yeah, that's a blanket thing for me. And even further, I don't use auth services.
Right.
Yeah, but if I had to for some reason, then 100% I would do what you're talking about, like some sort of webhook or something, so I can pull that data into my database. And like a large part of that is for me to be able to migrate off of them,
Right.
so avoid vendor lock-in. But on top of that too is if you don't have it in your own database, then like any request that you need to resolve the user to is going to have to talk to a third-party service, which like instantly sticks you on the slow path of whatever you're doing. Especially since we're using SQLite in the Epic Stack, we have 0 latency to our database. So yeah, I want things to be fast. I want to be able to move fast, and so I want to have control.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So coming back into here, I did miss last week because I was at RemixConf. So let me just catch up with where we are at. Okay, let's see. Oh, right. Yeah, talked with this person, helped them out. That's good. Adam, any recs for using Three.js or React 3 Fiber in Remix? And it's been a while, so answering this now. Unfortunately, not really. I have not used these tools myself, but and this is talking specifically about Remix. At RemixConf last year, there was a talk about using 3D. So let me see. Maybe, yeah, here it is. This might be useful to you. So I will stick this right there. Hopefully that is helpful. Good luck. I think there was a link to a demo and stuff that might be helpful there too. So good luck with your efforts in bringing 3D into Remix. I do hope eventually that Rocket Rental, the app that I'm using for teaching on Epic Web, I hope that it does do something with 3D so that I can show how to do that, because I think that would be cool. But yeah, not today. Justin, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I just thought of one. Looking at the Epic stack, the one thing that I don't understand, like honestly, like at all yet. So if you could explain to me, like on 5, what do you need the cache for? Like the admin/cache stuff. What does that do, and why do you think we need it?
Great question. I'll start by saying that's like sort of incomplete in some ways. So let me see if I can actually show you something. On kentcdodds.com, I have this cache admin page that allows me to see all of the things that I've got cached on my site. And both in SQLite as well as in my LiteFS or my LRU. So this is the in-memory cache stuff, and this is the SQLite cache. SQLite cache will be shared across all instances of my app, but I also have this way to choose between different instances of the app, which is kind of interesting. I'm hitting SJC, but the primary is Denver, so I'm not even hitting the primary, which is kind of fun. But if I switch to another one of these, my LRU cache is going to be different because those are different instances to have different memory and stuff. But all that we have in the Epic stack right now is if I click on this, this is going to open me up to the resource route for the LRU cache. So this is something, actually, we don't even have this in the Epic stack right now. What we have in the Epic stack is a SQLite side of this. Yeah, so this will take me to just the value of the cache. So here's the value. Here's the instance that I'm hitting right now, and the cache key of the thing I'm looking at. So this allows me to, as an admin to the site, like you wouldn't be able to do this. You're going to get redirected to login. So as only admins are able to see this, to see what's in the cache right now. And then what will be more valuable is to be able to delete values that are in the cache. So like if for some reason I needed to do some like purge some values from the cache or something, this would allow me to do that. So that's the idea. That's the goal of that, the cache stuff that's built in, is just to be able to have like some visibility into what's in the cache, especially for the stuff that's in memory, because that's like really hard to determine. So
I mean, like even before that though, like what, because you're essentially managing your own cache like this, right? Like this doesn't have anything to do with the browser.
That's, yeah, correct. So the cache that we have is for like lower level caching things. So the browser does have cache headers, and you'll notice even on my own site, as we navigate around to different pages, if we click on this, then we should see, oh, I probably better not show this here because it's got my cookie in there. So let's, and then you would be able to do all the stuff I'm doing. Let's look at this. Not logged in. Where is cache control? I actually, yeah, right here. So I've got this cache control header that says that this page has a max age of 3,600 seconds. I think that's, yeah, 3,600 divided by 60 divided by, that's 1 hour. So this will be cached for an hour in the browser's cache. So that works out okay over here, because there's actually nothing very, like there's nothing user specific. There's nothing that changes very frequently. Like my workshops don't actually change all that that often. Although I need to remove this. Whoops. That's a manual change there. But if I go to the blog, for example, and jump on one of these blogs, I have a recommendation down here at the bottom that it changes every time you refresh the page. And so for that, I can't cache that whole thing in the browser cache because it's going to be different every time. And so the solution to that is to not use HTTP caching. But if I don't do any caching at all, generating these recommendations is actually really expensive. It takes a number of queries. One of them involves like what blog posts have they read already, and various other like which one's the most popular, stuff like that. Because like one of these is a popular post, one of them is related to the post you're looking at, and another one is a completely random post. And then from that, I remove anything that you've already read as well. So that like there's some complicated things that go into these recommendations, which would make the page load time very slow. But you'll notice like when you go to my site, like this is not slow, this is quite fast. And so for that, I am doing lower level caching because I can't cache the whole page because it's going to be different every time. So I have to go lower down and look at the individual pieces of the page that are going to be slow and make those things as fast as it can. But there's only so much you can do to make things fast. And so the next thing that you do there is to just save the values in your own cache. So yes, it is managed myself. And you can actually look at the response here and look at the timer tab here, because I send headings that tell you everything that's going on. And so some of these things will have cache retrieval on them. Most of them should have cache retrieval to make because those are cached, and want to make it as fast as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kinda. I'm still a little confused like how it works, but I mean, I think some of that is probably.
Do you understand like the problem that it's solving? That's the most important thing first, is to understand the problem.
Right.
I can go into how it works next, but do you have any questions about the problem that it's solving?
I get that that's an expensive query. And it would be page blocking, I guess, right? Like the entirety of the page would be halted because you're calculating how to get these 3 articles at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to do with that?
Yes, it does. And if I wanted to, I could actually stream these in,
Right.
and so like it wouldn't block the whole page. It just have this little part be deferred till later. But
Right.
That experience is not a good one, because then like I feel like the image loading experience here is really quite nice. You'll notice that the dates and the titles are there like right instantly. So the only reason we have the image loading experience is because you can't do it any other way with images. Like you can't have that. You can't server render an image unless you're doing base 64 of the entire image, which is like really bad for
So like,
images this size.
Yeah, totally. So are you like calculating these things just like in the background somewhere and then sticking them in that cache? And when you say cache, it's really just like another instance of a database, right? Like it's just, they're like SQLite. So like, does it just give you the ability to basically calculate these do you calculate like a bunch of versions of these 3 things just like constantly and like stick them there or something?
That's another good question. So I don't do that. What I do is like performing the calculations themselves is actually not complicated. It's the inputs into the calculations are what's expensive. So determining which blog posts are the most popular, that's kind of expensive. Like that's a bunch of queries. And so actually, if we look at that cache page again, we have a sorted most popular slugs. And so this is in order of most popular posts on my site. And I just keep that updated. Yeah, the time to live is this long. That's in milliseconds. Now it's seconds. So for 5 minutes, I keep this thing updated. So every 5 minutes, it will perform the queries again and get me the sorted most popular slugs. So that's one input into these recommendations. And then another input into the recommendations is the blog post that the user has read. So I will cache that. I think I cache that. I don't know if I actually cache that. That query I think is pretty fast, but like any input into the calculation that is slow, I will cache so that when I perform the calculation, it's fast.
Oh, I see. So instead of saying, okay, I need this most popular article in my loader, I better do like the calculation that gives me that most popular article, you're able to just go to this cache and say, give me this article.
Yeah, and it's not something that I actually have to think about too much. Let's see, yeah, I can show you the code for this.
And you said it's like every 5 minutes, so you have like some like background like worker running or something?
No, so I use stale while revalidate. What that does, why did this not open my site? There it is. Yeah, so what stale while revalidate does is it basically says, well, here, let me pull up the code first. This is in blog server. This is where a lot of this stuff comes from. So we've got the get blog recommendations. None of this stuff is cached, but the things that it uses are cached. So get blog MDX list items. So give me all of the blog posts. That's what this thing does. And this is wrapped in cachified. So here's how I get a fresh value for that. And then it's cached under this key. And we could actually look at that key in here. Where did, oh, here it is. Yeah, right here. So MDX list items. Yeah. So now this is the actual value of the cache, and it's like tons and tons of stuff in here. That's just all of the front matter for every one of my blog posts. And calculating that is actually quite slow because we're like downloading all of the MDX files and their dependencies from GitHub, and then compiling those and getting the front matter, all of that stuff. Like it's a bunch of stuff going on. So anyway, as far as like when I'm actually calling this, I don't think about the fact that this is, oh, where did that go? Oh, right, there it is. When I'm calling this from my blog server, I'm not actually thinking about the fact that it's cached or anything like that. I'm just like, call the thing. There's a little exception right here that we don't need to discuss right now. but that's a basic idea is cachified allows me to, where it's implemented, say, I'm actually going to wrap this in a cache, and cachified will take care of that. And then as far as like, do I need to worry about, having that just update in the background and stuff? I don't, because with this stale while revalidate flag, it basically says, here's how long I want you to store this in the cache. Once that expires, then don't go to the cache. I want you to call this get fresh value instead. But making the user wait for getting the fresh value is no good. And so if it's already expired because this time is taken up, I'm actually okay giving a stale value for this much longer. So go ahead and give them stale value and then call get fresh value in the background. That's what stale while revalidate does.
So I guess, so in theory, would the first person who ever landed on that page ever not have anything to load from cache?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
the first person.
That helps me understand.
Yeah. So the first person to hit something that is not cached, that is called a cache miss. So they would have to wait. The trick then is to make sure that you're the first person by using automation. And so when I deploy, I have a endpoint. Actually, I can show you the health check here. That's going to do a fetch request to my homepage that says, and my homepage has a bunch of this stuff. Like there are blog recommendations on there too. So by just hitting the homepage, that like preloads a bunch of stuff in my cache. And so by making sure that I'm and the health check actually gets hit before Fly switches over to this new running VM. And so before any users actually see it, it's already gotten the cache preloaded.
Gotcha. So do you just like not await the calls over to this service too then, or?
So no, I do await, because pulling things out of the cache is going to be an async operation. And so it is gonna, like, there's gonna be an await. The consumer of the code doesn't know whether it's coming out of the cache or not. It doesn't make a difference to the consumer. And then in fact, even the code itself doesn't really care about whether it's in the cache or not. It's a declarative API that just describes, these are the conditions revolving around my cache. Here's how you get a fresh value if you ever need one. Like, that's fine if you need one. I don't know or care. Yeah, and so then Cacheify just manages, do I grab it out of the cache, or do I make them wait for the fresh value, or do I grab it out of the cache and then call the fresh value after I send that response? So basically, what it in the event that we need to update the fresh or the value in the background, what it will do is it will actually say, okay, get the fresh value, or so get the value out of the cache, then get the fresh value, but don't wait, and then return the value out of the cache. And then this thing just goes off. So it's like a fire and forget type of thing.
Gotcha. So there's really, the Cacheify is really doing kind of the heavy lifting.
Yep. Yeah. And Cacheify is a library you can install that was based on a library that I wrote inside of my own app. So like I implemented all of these ideas in this Cacheify function, and then somebody brilliant took it and put it into a library for us. And now I'm using that library. So this cache server, my Cacheify thing, is just like a wrapper around the actual Cacheify.
Oh, okay. And that's what's in Epic Stack too?
Yep. That's built in the Epic Stack.
Cool. Well, that definitely helps. I mean, I think as it comes further along, well, it looks like it's fully implemented on your site too, but it'll definitely just help me to dig in a bit too. But
yeah, for sure. And if you really want to dive in deep, then you could always join in and add this cache admin page. That would be actually, that's definitely something that needs to happen eventually. So I wonder if I do have that. I can't remember now whether I added that route or not. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, we've got that already. So yeah, that's quite helpful. And yeah, we do have the LRU too. Yeah, sweet. I already did that.
So it actually is all there.
Yeah. Yep. It's all there.
Cool.
All right. Sweet. Did you have any other follow-up questions, Justin?
No, not on that. That's helpful. I was kind of like confused on that whole thing. So
yeah, you're good. The trick is, the thing about caching is you want to not do it if you can help it. It's much better to make something fast just by virtue of it being fast than by having to cache it, because it adds a fair amount of complexity. You start worrying about, how do I invalidate a cache and stuff. I have this big long blog post that I wrote about caching a couple weeks ago that I need to polish up and publish, because it would explain a lot of this stuff from a fundamentals point of view. But yesterday or was it maybe the day before, I gave a talk for FW Days, JSFW Days, that it was a remote conference for Ukraine that talks about caching. It's entitled Caching for Cache, because I can't not make that pun. So I'm giving that same talk at Utah JS later. So if anybody wants to come out to Utah, yeah, it's gonna be good. But eventually, I do plan on publishing that blog post about this. So
cool.
Anyway, okay, sweet. So I missed a topic asked a question in the Zoom chat that I missed, and normally I don't answer questions from Zoom chat, and a topic is now gone, but I'm going to answer anyway. Was the TAN stack an inspiration for the initiative? I'm assuming of Epic Stack. Not exactly, but I did have a conversation with some folks on Twitter, and the idea of the Epic Stack kind of emerged from that. Originally, I was thinking the KCD stack. And when I said that, I was like, oh, that's like the TAN stack. But TAN stack is more like a collection of libraries that rather than a project starter or and project reference. So it's not really the same thing. But yeah, I like Tanner. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at this. Answering this now. So Dalvalana, or depending on where you're from, this could be Dalvayana or Dalvashana. So I could be pronouncing it wrong, even with those tries. Please feel free to correct me. I used to wrap my components to be tested with React Router, but I'm wondering if it's the best approach nowadays. Consider a pagination component as an example. It uses URL search parameters to keep the state of pagination, page number, and page size, so a specific page can be shared with the URL. When the user hits the next page button, a client-side navigation occurs with router push. Page number changes the URL. I want to test that behavior. Sensible. I'm using Next.js, and it's not as straightforward to wrap the test component with a real router as it is with the React Router. Yeah, right here, I was thinking, oh, I know the answer to your question. And then you said this, and now I have no idea. I'm so sorry. All the information I find on the internet suggests to mock the Next.js router, which is super wrong. Don't do that. Doesn't give me any confidence. Besides, I'd be testing implementation details by doing something like expect router push to be. Yeah, you don't want to do that. I'd like to assert that when the user clicks the next page button, content of the page changes. Yes, I understand your feeling there. I have an idea of what you might do, but yeah, let's keep reading. I see people suggesting doing this kind of stuff with the end-to-end test. That's, yeah, maybe. But it seems overkill to me, given that this is a very simple component, very easy to test with. Yeah. This is a great question. So here are a couple of thoughts. With React Router, that's exactly what I would do. Is I just, in fact, for something like this, I would just literally render the app with the window location set to the page where this component is rendered, and then do my interaction and just check the URL. That's how I would do it. That's how I do it in the Bookshelf app in Epic React, and it's great. That said, the Remix team is working on a create stub API for Remix, and I believe they're doing the same sort of thing for React Router that will make this varying levels of easier and more difficult. I think that for the most part, it's good what they're doing. At least in the Remix world, it's great. I'm not sure about the React Router world. If I were still working with the React Router app, I think I'd still do what I do in the Bookshelf app. Yeah, with Next.js Router, yeah, you're going to be stuck. And I can't do what I'm doing in the Bookshelf app with Remix either, just because there's a lot involved with the convention-based routing and stuff, or the file-based routing and stuff like that. If you're using the page or the app directory too, with now you've got server components, at this point, I don't think they have even thought about the testing strategy for that. That's pretty much just end-to-end test for stuff like that. So all of that said, if you are somehow able to render the thing at all, I'm assuming you wouldn't even be able to render it without the Next.js router as a provider. But if you have some way to do that, then what you might consider is, for this lower level test, is just asserting the URL that anchor tag is. So just like assume that the router knows how to do what it's doing, and just make sure that that URL is pointing to the right thing, and you don't even have to bother clicking it. That's one solution. If you feel like an end-to-end test is overkill. Yeah, definitely don't want to do the mocking the Next.js router. Sorry that I can't be more help. I don't know what Next.js actually recommends for this. And on top of that, once we get into server components and stuff, I'm pretty sure they don't know what they recommend either. So right now, end-to-end test is pretty much what you're stuck with. Sorry that can't be more helpful. I know that's not awesome. Okay, Tyler PS, answering this now. So this, I believe, is talking about the last module of, or one of the modules of the Bookshelf app. In Epic React, when creating a reusable modal, can create the following code for the dismiss button. Any reason you didn't use clone element wrapping the child? I think I actually answered this. You know what? I think I did. In courses, Epic React, here, maybe. I thought I answered this. It just looks very familiar. Yes, I did. No, I guess I didn't. Okay. So let's go back and let's talk about this. So why do I do this? The big reason, rather than just wrapping the child with a div with an onClick, the primary reason is for accessibility. Although, as I say that, if the whoever's using the modal dismiss button is rendering a button, then that should propagate, and so it should actually work. Even, you know, yeah, that should be fine. But yeah, I don't really see a lot of value in having an extra div. So yeah, I just add the onClick to the child. But yeah, maybe like wrapping it in a div. I would double check, but I'm pretty sure the click would propagate to the div, and so it would be just fine. But my natural inclination is to shun any divs with onClicks. So that's probably the primary reason why. The way this is going to be used, for those who are unaware, is you're going to render this and have a button inside of it. That's how it's supposed to be used. So anyway. Yeah, pretty sure that would work just to use a div. But like I said, I kind of shun the whole div onClick thing just for accessibility reasons. So that's probably why. Okay, gnarly. Hi guys, I'm using MSW with GraphQL to test, but we use GraphQL hooks like use fetch user query to fetch, but I want to test whether it's called with the correct fetch policy. As far as I can tell, you can't do that in MSW, but wondering if anyone knows an effective way alongside MSW. I don't, sorry. I don't use GraphQL. I haven't in years. I did use GraphQL with MSW years ago, I think. But yeah, actually I do for some of my apps, my workshop apps. I do use it. But yeah, never had to do anything with the fetch policy. So sorry, I cannot help. I don't know. What's up, Nick Serve? Yeah, sweet. Thank you. We're gonna give you a super reaction. Whoa, that is awesome. These things are the coolest. All right. Hey, Artem, it's nice to see you. Thank you. Yeah, super. Looks like you'll handle that. I appreciate it. It is now 10:28. So that is it for the time we've got, and I've answered all the questions. So that's good. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks everybody for joining. If you want to ask further questions, then the Call Kent podcast is right here, and it's great. If you don't want to ask on there, then office hours is right here. Always feel free to ask on Discord, and I will do my best to answer as soon as I can. I am. Oh, Justin, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a follow-up question or something?
No, I was going to say thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, so I do plan on live streaming today. I'll probably take a break, go upstairs and just say hi to my wife and stuff, and then come back, and I will live stream on what this stream was titled from the beginning, building client hints. So more stuff on theming and stuff like I was doing yesterday. Should be kind of interesting. I'm building that into the Epic stack, and then I'll bring it over into Rocket Rental eventually. Yeah, the Epic stack rocks. I love working on it. So thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you all in the future.